Hi everybody, welcome to an all-new episode of the KMS Quick Shots. My name is Flo, and today I'm joined by James and Lauren, the duo known as the Trickster Figures. Hi guys, nice to meet you.
Hi,
Hey.
thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for being here. So let's start by learning about your history. How did you guys meet?
Well, we actually met when we were in a city that was separate from where we both lived. I had a job where I was traveling to a different city every 3 months or so for a couple of years. And I was in Cincinnati, Ohio, staying with some friends in their attic for a couple months. And I had all my instruments set up there, my looping pedal. And James had actually come to visit the same friends, and they had recommended that he was a musician. He had just made an album himself on his phone. And so he brought that up for me to listen to and just started playing me some songs. And I played him a couple things. He ended up laying down a couple guitar parts and vocals on my looping pedal. And I started putting some vocals and instrumentation on that. And the first time that was the first time we played together.
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah, and we just really were surprised how much we liked the sound of his kind of grittier, like vagabond guitar and some of the gentle vocals that I brought over the top of it. So we kept working on stuff. I went to a couple different cities and we were sending stuff back and forth. He was in Minneapolis playing in a band at the time, and I ended up going to Minneapolis for a couple months, and we wrote some more there before I ended up going out to Oregon, and he came out as well. That's where we formed Trickster Figures and started playing gigs and working on what would become the album.
So Lauren, were you in bands before as well?
I wasn't in a band, I was just playing by myself.
Okay, and James, for you, it was one other band before you founded Trickster Figures?
I played in it was like an indie rock band in Minneapolis that it ended up breaking up and then kind of reformed. So it was kind of two bands there, but I was in it was with the same like lead singer and songwriter in that band. So yeah, it was kind of two different bands while I was in Minneapolis. And then I also kind of played I'd lived in California for a while, and I there were some really good musicians there. And so I was kind of in a band for a little bit with some of those people. We did this, like, we were kind of a band for like about a month, and we went on this trip of like the southern US, just got in a minivan and kind of busked in a bunch of different cities for like one summer. That was a lot of fun. But then after that, I was back in Minneapolis, and then did those other bands, and then I always kind of made some music by myself, because most of those I wasn't really like the main songwriter. It's kind of more auxiliary roles, but I had always kind of been working on stuff myself too. But I never really presented it until we got together.
So was there a pivotal moment where you guys sat there and said, okay, now we're got this band project together? Because if I understood this correctly, first you just loosely put some ideas together and see how this works. But when was the point you actually thought about you as a band and formed the band Trickster Figures?
Yeah, that was kind of like once we were like decided to go out to Oregon, we thought that would be just pretty cool to live out there. And she kind of had the ability to do that with her job.
Yeah, and I think we had played mostly probably open mics at that point separately, but we were starting to play on each other's songs. And we might have even gotten a couple gigs. I think our first gig was something that I got at a bar out in Oregon and just had him play on. And then we decided we just wanted to be playing these songs live together. So we ended up deciding on a name, and that going forward, we were going to work together on the songs.
Yeah. What is the name Trickster Figures about?
It's like, I tend to be kind of fascinated with like mythology and literature as well, but it's kind of a character or an archetype that shows up in mythologies all over the world, and in different like works of literature as well. But I was always really interested in the trickster figure because they're kind of like an outsider type of character that is misunderstood by people. They're usually kind of like a catalyst for something new to happen or to kind of break or crush the status quo in some ways. People don't really understand them. And they also can have a role where they're more the fool, where they think they're tricking people, but they end up being the one that gets tricked or the one that gets duped. And I think that's kind of just interesting, like that they've kind of got both aspects. So it seemed like a really just kind of an interesting like concept or character to, I don't know, like refer to, I guess.
When you see yourself as a band, do you actually see yourself in the musical landscape out there as the Trickster figure, or is it just a wordplay? So,
I mean, I like to kind of think of that a little bit. I mean, I don't know that we're too literal with it, but I do really like the imagery of it. Yeah, and I don't know. I think
sometimes there's a lesson in the songs too, like there is in the Trickster figure fables. That's something that your lyrical content tends to reflect a lot.
Yeah, and I guess I kind of think of us maybe a little bit as outsiders or something in some way. But so yeah,
you're not really following standards, I guess, with your music. So clicking through a couple of your tracks, I always felt that you're doing your style because you want to do it, not you want to sell it. So whatever it is you create, it's actually who you are. But we get to that later on. So you just told me that you were traveling a lot earlier in the years. So what's this traveling about since you came together? Is it where you're searching for a place called home, or is it just out of curiosity to see land and country?
I think we both have, that's an interesting way to put it, the curiosity to see the land and country. I think we're both looking for something to be home maybe, but not, we were interested in seeing different places. So he had done quite a bit of traveling before I met him, and I was in the middle of traveling, and then we ended up traveling. Even when we went out to Oregon, we ended up moving to, I think, 3 different cities while we were there before we came back to St. Louis.
And we maybe both get a little restless, but it also it kind of worked that Lauren's a physical therapist, and she had a traveling physical therapy job, and so that was kind of an avenue almost to be traveling, because she could kind of pick a state and get licensed in it, and then go there and stay with friends or go see a new city and kind of check out that city for 3 to 6 months or whatever. And I think we're both really like the idea of just touring around or traveling the country and playing music. I feel like we'd both be pretty satisfied if we could just do that all the time anyway. So
So you recently released not 1 but 2 tunes at the same time, called Delighted and Perfect. First question for me would be, out of curiosity, why both at once? Was this male and female approach of both tracks a coincidence or part of the plan?
It was kind of planned because the album we had released before that, Through the Seams, had a pretty big variety on it, and we wanted each song to individually have its own identity. But if you listen to the whole thing, it spans from some more dreamy, soft songs to some grittier, heavier songs. And in preparation for our next album that we're close to starting working on, we wanted to release a couple standalone singles. So we started 3 songs. One of them is not out yet, but the other 2 were Delighted and Perfect. One was more based on my vocals and instrumentation. One was more based on his. And then the 3rd song is more equal between us. So we thought it would just be good, because those songs didn't really seem to fit on either album, to go ahead and release those. We released those 2 together specifically because they were so different.
One of each of us.
Yeah, we wanted to give both sides of that before we released the next one that is more of a mix.
Yeah, I was listening to Delighted, and the other one, James, you sent me that you also released the Perfect tune. So I thought, okay, I listened to this as well, and all of a sudden I was, okay, these are not counterparts, but first part of the story, second part of the story, and due to the fact that they are all male vocal based and female vocal based, they sort of probably are beginning and end of the new album, but that's up to you guys, I guess, to place them on the new album. So taking these tunes as recent examples of your work, would you say, is there a linear process of songwriting you guys follow when you create new tunes?
I mean, I think most often we tend to, I'll go write something and she'll go write something. We might check in with each other, or I'll bring her some chords or just like a little germ of an idea of a song and see if she likes it or whatever. But then I'll go kind of just work on it and she'll work on something else, and then form it lyrically, get it to a spot where I can bring it back to her, and then we'll arrange it from there and see what she can add to it instrumentation wise. And she will do kind of the same. That tends to be the process that we use most often. There are times when we kind of write stuff more in tandem together and bouncing it off of each other, but more often than not, we kind of both take an idea and just go work on it.
So would you just not end up throwing ideas at each other the whole evening, and the other one always says, "Nah, I don't like this. Give me another one." or is this not how this works?
It kind of does work like that, because we'll write a lot of instrumental parts and initial melodies, and I'll hear him playing one and say, "Oh, I like that one," and then that will motivate him more to kind of progress that one and finish it. Or I might be working on something and he'll say, "That sounds great, but I hear it going to this chord next," and that'll kind of cause that to go a different direction. We have so many beginnings of songs, so getting the feedback from each other about which ones to push forward, that really that happens a lot.
Which one of you has the most stacked notebook with ideas? Are they equal, or does someone has more ideas than the other one?
I think it's equal but different, because I think he has more lyrical content notebooks and I have more instrumental ideas probably saved up.
Yeah, I know I've got a big stack of notebooks, but she kind of does too. So
mine are more audio files and video files.
Mine are more word-based, probably.
And we have a lot of songs built up too. Like the first album, those were pretty old songs, and they were songs that a lot of those were ones we'd already kind of written separately.
Individually, yeah, separately.
And arranged together and been playing out. So we picked the songs that would tell a good story for that album and got that out. But we've got another concept for the next album of things we want to finish that'll be a little bit of a different sound.
Do you want to tell a wholesome story with an album all the time, or is it coincidence if the songs fit into a grand scheme, so to speak? Like, is there
story? This one is kind of a mix between those. The last one that we did, there's a song on it in the middle called Runaways that seemed like the most appropriate song to kind of build the album around. And we did, when selecting the songs and selecting the order, put a lot of thought into what story that would tell. I don't know if you want to talk
I think usually for an album, we'd probably try to have at least some consistency, if not, totally a concept album or something. But I think we've got enough songs to choose from that when we go to group them, we try to find ones that kind of belong together in some way, whether they tell a narrative thread all the way through or just kind of all belong in the same kind of ballpark of what this album is dealing with or the themes that it's dealing with. But I think we like to have they're probably like connected in some way. The songs on an album, I think that would be something we will usually kind of try to stick to.
Because the next question would be, why even bother to release albums nowadays? I often hear from other musicians that they just release single tracks once a month, maybe twice, once every 2 months or something like this, because they stay in the loop this way. And most of the other artists always tell me, I want to tell a story with several chapters, and you cannot just throw these single chapters out there. You have to have the album for this. And I might be going for a wild throw there, but I think it's important for you guys to actually tell a story. There's a meaning to every track. It's not just a groove or a melody. You say, hey, let's get that out. It sounds great, but it is also a deeper meaning connected. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would say so. And I think what some of those artists were talking about, just releasing a constant stream of things, that's probably a good marketing strategy. Like that probably is successful for them, and we may try to do some of that, but we put more importance behind releasing it the way that we hear it artistically. So I'm not sure if it's as commercial that way to release it as an album, but it's a more complete and cohesive representation of the songs and the art that we wanted to make that way.
Yeah, I think it's more important to us to be telling the story we want to tell. And I think there's something just about us staying us and doing what we can do that is kind of unique to our abilities or our perspective on life in the world, and what we can offer that's unique is kind of like trying to have that have more of a story there, have it tell something. I think we're more interested in that than trying to constantly keep something churning out. We'd rather it be deeper and take a little longer, I think.
So there's this signature authentic core to every of your songs, even the more unusual ones. I would say like the one release called wrong kind of party. So it's a more quirky approach of sound wise, but it's always signature authentic. It's connected to you as a band. You can hear that it's coming from you. And it is not something to necessarily please the masses, but it's just what you want to try to transmit with it. Would you say this authenticity is the message in your songs, or do you use several melodic or instrumental techniques just because no one else does?
I would say the goal is to have it be the authentic expression of what we wanted to say. The more that music that we've released, there's sometimes a little bit of pressure to see, the playlists want this type of sound, and should we change things to make them fit in more with what's out there? But I think we always come back to trying to make it as authentic as we can to what we intended it to be, even if it stands out a little bit, and even if it kind of gets rejected from
if it's not super accepted, but it's still what we wanted to make and what we set out to make.
I'd say when we get some feedback that says, I can't think of something else that this sounds like, that's our favorite type of response to get.
I think it's the goal you have with releasing tracks is always the most important thing, to follow that goal. So you're not for the fame or the numbers out there. You're just there to give little pieces of you out there. So from there on, I don't think it's really important if they all fit on a playlist or in a top 10 list, but it should only be authentic. So with that being said, when you do live gigs, I read that you use a huge arsenal of instruments, from harp to harmonica, fiddle, and even beatboxing, James. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
So is this part of your performance plan to attract people when you play live, or is this also part of who you are as musicians?
I think it's the latter, because a lot of the instruments, we've got them all lined up here, but are things that I had collected over time, because as I was playing, I would hear different sounds in my head and I wanted to be able to produce those, to add those to the tracks. I'd want something earthier, so I wanted to get a banjo, or something lighter and prettier, so I wanted to get a harp. So over a couple of years, mostly before I met James, I started to acquire those from mostly like thrift shops and like used instruments and ads and things like that. And then just build those into songs to make them sound the way I heard in my head. And then when we came together, we would both, he would just pick up an instrument as well and just add them to the songs to get the full sound. So when we play live, we can play with just acoustic guitars, but we want the songs to sound the way that we intended them to and the way that we heard them in our heads when we were writing and arranging them. So we usually do end up bringing quite a few things so that you can hear the whole expression of them.
Yeah, and part of it, I think, too, is we kind of like the unit as just the two of us in a lot of ways, and it makes us a little like lighter on our feet, or you don't have to coordinate between having 6 people in your band, which is really cool if you have a band, but there's a little more that we don't have to coordinate so much with so many people, and it's almost like out of necessity. Then we want these sounds. It'd be awesome if we, had dedicated musicians to those things, but for different instruments. But I think we end up trying to make a way that we can arrange it, that we can just do it ourselves. And we really like that, and kind of being able to do it all ourselves. The most that we can.
Who told you to play those instruments then? Do you take lessons, or are you self-taught?
We're pretty much self-taught. I've taken a couple just like community classes, like in different cities I've been in, they might have like a songwriting class. You bring in your guitar. I think I did take one for the banjo where you just go for like 6 sessions and learn a couple chords. But for the most part, because we both learned guitar on our own and mostly play by ear, that's how we've picked up the other instruments as well. Just look for the notes that you hear until you find them and get the sound that you want.
Yeah, Lauren's really good at picking up. It seems, especially with stringed instruments, she can pick one up and usually kind of figure out some stuff pretty quickly with it.
It's also just fun. Like, it's part of the benefit of having different instruments. They're just fun to play.
Yeah.
Fun to learn.
Yeah, and I mean, in terms of playing guitar, I think I learned 2 chords and started writing songs immediately with that, and kind of have just tried to learn a little bit more as I go, but never really being that systematic about it, kind of just starting simply and using it as an avenue to write simple songs, and then see if you learn a little bit more as you go. So yeah.
So once the draft of a song is ready, who does the mixing, recording, mastering part of it?
So our last album and all the singles so far, we've recorded at a studio here in St. Louis with Matt Sims. I think his studio is called Audius Prime. And we go in and record the tracks, and we bring in the arrangements that we want and play the instruments. And he engineers them, but he's also ended up pretty much co-producing everything because he has a lot of good ideas. He'll say, I think we should cut right here and just have it take a break and then kick back in. He's added most of the beats. We've done some hand percussion, but we tend to talk to him about like tapping out the rhythms he wants or that we want, and he'll program them in.
Sometimes he'll put in some like subtle synths and stuff like that.
And make them sparkle. And then we'll just sit together, the three of us, and do the mixing. We'll say exactly what we want, and he'll say like this, and then we do another round like this, until we get it just so.
Yeah, but he's been really great to work with, and just he brings out he does kind of know how to make our songs sparkle. It feels like he'll do that extra thing that you almost don't even notice that it's there, but just really like kind of makes it shine. I feel like so we have really enjoyed working with him.
I think such a guy in the back, so to speak, can make or break a song actually, because if he screws up the polishing, so to speak, the song will turn out the wrong way probably. But also I think you gotta have this curiosity. I imagine you guys showing up at the studio with the minivan packed with all the instruments and then picking this one, and this one, and the guy in the studio goes like, okay.
Yeah, we'll tend to record a lot, and then he may say, it's just my recommendation, but you probably don't need all 6 of those instruments at once there. So
yeah.
And sometimes we'll say, well, we want it to be that full, we've got to use them. But sometimes we'll say, yeah, you're right. We needed another set of ears. Let's take this one and this one off. And
he sometimes kind of tones us down a little bit, because we might want to add 10 layers to a song and be like, let's cool it on the layers. But
So with the 2 tracks finished right now and a third one in the making, as I heard, what's next for you guys? Is the 3rd track coming this year or next year?
We intended for it to come out this year, but it took a little bit longer. So I think it's probably going to come out in January. And then we'll get started recording the next album that we've already got. We started to map out the songs for that. I'd like that to be a visual album too. This last one, we had ideas for music videos for pretty much every song, but we didn't end up getting to all of them time-wise. But I think this time, because we will have put more thought into mapping out the timing of when we're recording and how we're releasing things, we'll be able to get more videos done.
So doesn't this require another team and a whole lot of time you probably don't have in your hands to produce videos?
Kind of, but
yeah, we did 2 videos for the last one. One was actually set up by a friend of ours, and it was a really nice way to do it because somebody else shot the video. That was for Salt of the Ocean. So we went in for the half day and performed it, and they shot it and edited it, and we got it back. And it's more expensive, but it was easy. And then the sleepwalking one, we shot and edited ourselves, and we had a lot of ambitious ideas for that one. There's a lot of green screening and different settings and set building. So that took me a long time to edit. So after learning from that, I do think we can put out more videos in a shorter amount of time. Now that I know kind of how much time it takes to go into them, I think we can plan them in a way that's a little bit more doable between us.
And we might see if someone else wants to shoot one or something.
I think we'll probably try to get one professionally shot and do the rest ourselves.
But we like to do a lot of it ourselves too, if possible. It's time consuming, and we're always kind of searching for the time. We try to like carve out time to be moving all of this forward, but we could definitely spend all day, every day working on all of this stuff, I think.
So there's not a fixed schedule yet, but you already have the plans to finish the album, make the videos, and probably release it hopefully next year, autumn-like-ish.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
It seems like stuff always takes longer than we want for it to. So I think that's a good goal for us to have. And it would be great if we can get there, but it's still kind of we're still forming in the formation phase in a lot of ways. So it's kind of, we're not going to put it out until it's done, until we're really happy with it. But it would be fantastic if we could get it done by
within
next
a year.
Yeah.
I think we're doing better with drafting out timelines this time. After in the past, it took us a couple years to record the first album. We would just kind of get things done as we did,
as we could, and
we've learned from that. But you probably know you do pretty much everything yourself, so.
Yeah, that's why I was asking, because the day only has 24 hours and they are never enough. You put a day job there and the family and what else you got as hobbies. Hopefully none of you is into sports or something like this, because those are time-consuming monsters out there, so to speak. But I guess in this schedule you planned with loose ends, so to speak, but a master plan above it all. I think there will be bigger things to come over the next year for Trickster Figures.
Yeah, we hope so. Thank you. Yes.
So Lauren, James, thank you very much for meeting me tonight. It was a pleasure talking to you. Guys out there, if you want to know more about Trickster Figures and their work and their tricks, please make sure to check out the social handles at the end of the video. That's it with this interview. All I have to say is be safe. Thank you for watching. Until next time, bye.
All right, bye.